Hi everybody, it's James here. Welcome to another video. Hope everybody's doing well. So today I'm going to be talking about Ry Cooder actually, because I've been listening to a lot of Ry Cooder in the last, probably the last couple of months to be honest with you. I completed my Ry Cooder collection a while back, kind of earlier this year. I say completed, I don't have everything. I've not been buying or seeking out the soundtrack albums just yet anyway. I've been trying to focus on just his classic run of albums that started in 1970 and went through to, I don't know, kind of like the late 80s. And I've got everything now except there's a live album that came out at some point, don't have that one yet. So I've been into Ry Cooder for many years. I used to collect his records back, probably as far back as the 90s, because they always seemed to be quite readily available. And you know, I was interested in him and his guitar playing, and I just think he's a bit of an unsung hero of music really. He doesn't get a huge amount of love on the VC. I know there are a few fans here and there. Roswell Ryan springs to mind here in the UK, and a couple of other people admire him, I know, but he doesn't get a huge amount of attention, so I thought it might be quite nice to talk about him a bit, show the collection. And the theme that I've come up with to kind of highlight Ry Cooder is just to look at 10 of my favourite cover versions done by Ry Cooder of other people's material. Because one thing about Ry Cooder is, even though he's a great songwriter himself and, you know, clearly a sublime guitar player, I think one of his undoubted strengths really is his amazing ability to reinterpret other people's songs. And it's not something which is perhaps immediately recognisable when you listen to a great cover version done by Ry Cooder. He stamps his own identity onto the music so strongly, and he somehow turns whatever song he does into a Ry Cooder song. You kind of end up assuming that the original version is going to sound pretty much the same or similar, and it can come as quite a shock to the system when you check back and listen to the original version of the song, because often it's totally different and you just think, wow, that's amazing what he's done to it. He turns everything he does into just this immaculate, tasteful kind of Ry Cooder, kind of smooth slide guitar, and making it sound like he kind of homogenises everything. That's not what he does. Every cover version that he does, he puts, you know, unique spin on it. And of course what Ry Cooder is, he's an amazing archaeologist of music, and his roots stretch back through all sorts of different types of music. You've got the Tex-Mex stuff, you've got jazz, you've got a lot of soul music and classic R&B, doo-wop, blues obviously, but he always had a great talent for unearthing these kind of absolutely brilliant but maybe semi-obscure old you know, pop hits from back in the day, early doo-wop stuff, R&B things that are just amazing. And like I said, when you hear the originals, you just think, you know, he's done a really, really amazing job there. So I urge you, after this video, to check out some of the original versions that I'm going to highlight and play them back to back with Ry's versions, because yeah, it's quite an education. Now there's two records I'm not going to be highlighting today, just because I wanted to do a pick of my favourite 10, you know. On a different day, maybe it would have been a different 10. So, Boomer's Story from 1972, even though it's got some great stuff on it, I'm not going to feature anything from that. It does have some great stuff on it. It's got a version of Dark End of the Street on it, which is obviously a classic R&B song, made famous by, well, it was made famous by loads of people, everybody recorded it. James Carr did a great version of it. And there's material on this record by country blues artists such as Sleepy John Estes and I think maybe Skip James, but nothing made the cut from that record for this particular list. And the other record that I'm not going to feature is Jazz from 1978, which contains a lot of very kind of early material by artists, you know, jazz artists. Bix Beiderbecke's on here and various other people. So there's nothing from that one in this particular list, yeah, apart from that I've got a big wodge of Ry to show you and to talk about. So we're going to go from number 10 and we're going to go up to number 1, number 1 being my favourite cover version by Ry Cooder. So we'll start with this record. This is 1987's Get Rhythm, which is a brilliant album. My favourite track off this actually is a Ry Cooder original, Ry Cooder, Jim Dickinson and John Hyatt, their song Across the Borderline, which features a guest vocal performance by Harry Dean Stanton, and it is beautiful. It is the most beautiful slide guitar solo ever waxed. It's amazing. But the cover version I'd like to highlight from this record actually is the first track on side 2, a really great version of All Shook Up by Otis Blackwell and Elvis Presley. It's quite a funky version, it's quite heavy, it's got some really great kind of churchy backing vocals in it. It's quite kind of churning and abrasive, and perhaps a little bit unusual for Ry Cooder. Ry Cooder's known for perhaps a kind of smooth and mellow sound, but that one certainly is quite rocking in its way. So that's number 10, All Shook Up by Elvis and Otis. So at number 9, we're going to get into the realms of kind of, well, soul, I guess, classic soul. This is from his album Chicken Shack Music, which came out in 1976. I'll show you the back. And the song I want to pick from this one actually is a classic Ben E. King song, Stand By Me, made famous of course by John Lennon. This version, it's quite kind of slow and tender, and it's got accordion on it, as lots of the music on this album has. This is his most kind of Tex-Mex record, I guess. So yeah, it's got some lovely sanctified backing vocals on it. It's slow and sensual, like I said, and just a great version of that classic song, Stand By Me. We've got this album next, Paradise and Lunch. Great record. This came out in 1974. This album has got a lot of very loose and funky stuff on it. There's a guest appearance by Earl Hines on here. So the song is It's All Over Now, and obviously that song was written by Bobby Womack and Shirley Womack, and it was a hit for the Stones. I didn't realise this, but the Stones version came out really soon after the Womack's version, and the Womack's version I don't think charted at all. The Stones version was a huge hit. It was back in 1964. It was done originally by the Valentinos, which was Bobby Womack's group, and I just love this version. You know, again, it's kind of loose and funky. It's got a bit of a New Orleans flavour, a shuffling guitar, beautiful backing vocals, and just a really nice soulful arrangement. Quite different to previous versions that you might have heard. Great stuff. So yeah, from Paradise and Lunch, we've got It's All Over Now. Right, so number 7, we're going to skip and grab this record, and this is really eye-opening. So this is from the album Bop Till You Drop, which came out in, I think, 1979 possibly, yeah, 79, and the song, it's right at the end of the record. As you know, it's not, it's at the end of side 1, sorry, and it's called I Think It's Gonna Work Out Fine. And I've always loved this track. It's a very, very slow, beautiful, sensual, bluesy slide guitar piece, really affecting, you know, it's a bit of a tearjerker. I often find myself welling up when I'm listening to it. It's gorgeous. It's a classic kind of Ry Cooder, beautiful, sensual thing, you know. And then you check back and listen to the original, and it sort of blew my head off really when I heard it. Ike and Tina Turner, 62, is this really abrasive, rocking kind of Ike and Tina single. It was from their album Dynamite, and it's got a real textbook example of Tina Turner's guttural vocals, you know, that kind of hard, raspy thing that she used to do. And when you start listening to the version of it, you can instantly hear the melody, and you just think, God, how on earth did Ry Cooder tap into that? You know, he heard that record, he heard that song, and he spotted something in it, a harmonic change or a melody, and he just totally reinvents it as this kind of slow, wonderful, soulful kind of slide blues thing. Gorgeous. Really, you know, really amazing. So we now move to number 6, and this comes from, let me get this right now, I think it is from, yeah, it's from this record, The Slide Area, which came out in 1982. This is one of Ry's more smooth 80s sounding records. Ry Cooder had a good 1980s, he didn't make a bad record in the 80s. The stuff he did became more digital, a bit more smoothed over and polished, but his playing just kept getting better and better. And on this record there is a really beautiful version of the Curtis Mayfield song Gypsy Woman, which was done by the Impressions originally. It's a song I've always loved. I mean, I love the Impressions anyway. They're kind of creamy, heavenly vocal harmonies are just really stunning. Now, Ry turns it into this deep, beautiful, soulful piece with splashes of accordion and vibraphone. And when it goes into the chorus, it just hits this beautiful, just this deep kind of lush harmonic blanket, you know. It's just like wrapping yourself up in a duvet. It's gorgeous. So yeah, check that out. Ry's version of Gypsy Woman by Curtis Mayfield, which comes from this rather fine album, The Slide Area, from 1982. Okay, so we're making progress. So we're up to number 5 now, and we're going to go to 1980, and this record, Borderline, which is another very fine Ry album with lots of nice original tracks. Now the song on this record, which again is beautiful, is called Down in the Boondocks. The song was written by Joe South, who was an American singer-songwriter from Atlanta, Georgia, but it was recorded by an American artist called Billy Joe Royal, and it was a hit in 1965. And Boondocks is a reference to, I think it's an American phrase which denotes any kind of rural area, you know, an area where there's not much going on in terms of, you know, shops and houses. So the song is about somebody trying to have a kind of romantic liaison with somebody from this this very kind of rural area, and he's kind of besotted. It's a really lovely song, but I mean, Ry just turns it into a very slow, again, a very slow and sensual piece with some wonderful drumming from Jim Keltner, who just turns in this very kind of loose, rolling performance on the drum kit. Really, really great. I mean, it's just a great performance. Obviously, Jim Keltner played with Ry on lots of albums in the 1970s, but he turns in a wonderful, spectacular performance on that. So, yeah, just great stuff. Down in the Boondocks from Borderline. Okay, so moving up to number 4 now, and we're going to go all the way back to 1970 and Ry Cooder's fantastic, much unsung, I have to say, debut album, which is just called Ry Cooder. And this is a stunning debut. Obviously, he'd made his name a little bit already with the Captain Beefheart Band, but he didn't have a huge profile, I guess, at this point. I'm not sure when Ry Cooder worked with Keith Richards. I know he taught Keith Richards the open D tuning at some point, which was the tuning that Keith went on to pioneer all those great Stones riffs. I'm not sure if that was after this record or before. Anyway, this is his debut album. It contains quite a few different cover versions. There's Dark is the Night by Blind Willie Johnson, Going to Brownsville by Sleepy John Estes. There's a couple of, or at least, oh yeah, there's a track by Randy Newman, Old Kentucky Home. The song I wanted to highlight though is the final song on the record, which I've always loved. It's How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live? And Ry's version is really funky, it's really soulful, it's really gritty. Now the original version was was written by somebody called Blind Alfred Reed, and he was from Floyd County, and he was basically a kind of old-time musician and fiddler. He used to make records with, I think it was his son, used to play guitar, and Blind Alfred used to play the fiddle. And the original was recorded in 1929 in New York. And again, if you play it back to back with Ry's version, it's quite kind of eye-opening, because you've got this kind of scratchy old fiddly kind of tune, you know, something that you might hear on Harry Smith's folk anthology. You play it back to back with Ry's version, and it's just this great kind of funky 1970 kind of blues rock soul version of it. Really great. So yeah, How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live by Blind Alfred Reed on the Ry Cooder debut. Okay, so we're now going to move up into the top 3. So we go back now to 1979 again, and Bop Till You Drop. Now, this has got a wonderful version of the song Go Home Girl, which originally had been done by Arthur Alexander, the great R&B singer, back in, I couldn't give you the date, I don't think. Oh, I can. 62. It was the follow-up single to the song Anna, which was made very famous, of course, by the Beatles on the Please Please Me album on their first record. And Arthur Alexander's version is a kind of deep soul cut, and it tells the story. I think it reflected what was going on in his life at the time. He was struggling in his marriage, I think, and he was attempting to rein himself in and not have an affair with his best friend's wife. I think that was the story. I think Anna had the same story. And Go Home Girl is the story of this man. You know, basically he's just about to have an affair with this girl. You know, he completely bottles it and just says, you know, you need to go home because obviously you're my best friend's girlfriend, and I can't compromise the friendship. It's a wonderful song, this kind of emotional tangle going on, you know. And Ry Cooder turns it into it's one of the most legendary performances of his career. It starts out very smoochy, very slow, very just a kind of slow burner. And then he kind of opens it out into this wonderful slide riff, and it turns into this shimmering pop song, really. It's fantastic. It's got a bit of a soul gospel feel to it, and yeah, I could have put it number one, but there were two songs on the list that I was so tempted to put them higher, but that is one of the undoubted highlights of Ry's career. Okay, so we're going to go to number two, and we're going to go back to Paradise and Lunch, back to 1974 again, and this one was another eye-opener because I've always loved this song. It's my favourite song on the album. It's the song Married Man's a Fool, which was done originally by, well, I say originally, Blind Willie McTell, the great, was it Georgian 12-string guitar player, and I knew it was by him, but I'd never particularly checked out the original for ages, and then when I checked it and listened back to it, I was thinking, wow, you know, again, Ry's done that thing again. He's taken this song. I mean, it's a great version, the original version. You can hear it on YouTube, and I suspect that Blind Willie McTell didn't write the song. He probably, you know, borrowed it from an earlier source. But Ry turns it into this very, very funky, upbeat, quite kind of happy kind of song. It's quite sort of ironic because the song is basically about, you know, I think it might even be told from the perspective of a preacher who's preaching to his congregation, and, you know, basically saying, you know, a married man is a fool if he thinks that his wife is never going to be tempted to stray beyond the marital bedroom and have an affair with another man. And so it's got a kind of dark humour to it, and Ry definitely picks up on that, and he turns it into one of the most loose and funky cover versions of his career. Great song, but do check out the version by Blind Willie McTell because it's great. Right, so now we're going to feature for the first time actually for number one, my favourite cover version by Ry Cooder, and it comes from this record. This is Into the Purple Valley. Look at the cover on this. This was a gift from John Downing, 6-inch Pianist 319. This came out in 1972, and I was struck by this song immediately. The first time I heard it, I thought, wow, that is a great song. I didn't know if it was a Ry original or if it was a cover. It's on side one, and it's called Teardrops Will Fall, and Ry does it as this very bluesy, soulful kind of pop song. It's got a really great groove to it, and so I checked back, and the original was done by a band called Dickie Do and the Don'ts, from which was 1959 on Swan Records. The song was written by Jerry Dickie Do Granahan and Marion Smith, and apparently Jerry Granahan, who was Dickie Do, he produced the original version of Wild Thing by the Wild Ones. Now their version of it is very, very upbeat, horn-driven R&B. It's an absolutely brilliant record. It's got a very blistering, full, dynamic vocal performance, almost sort of operatic, but it's got all these kind of R&B horns in it. It's just a brilliant kind of lost 45, really, you know, from back in the day. That's what I love about Ry Cooder. He was such a musical archaeologist. He would dig back through the history of popular music, and he would just turn up these great songs, these great kind of early records, these great early R&B records. And it's not so much that he would put his own stamp on them, he would just totally reconstruct them from the ground up and just turn them into these wonderful slide guitar, blues pop songs. So I'm going to put that at number one. Teardrops Will Fall, Ry Cooder's version of a fantastic song by Dickie Do and the Don'ts, which must surely be the greatest band name of all time. So that's my list of 10. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Do please check out these originals. They are all great, and Ry's versions are just as great in a completely different way. So that'll do for now. Take care. I will see you all soon. Bye bye.